This is Melissa Gonzalez. Today is Friday, April 26th, 2013. I'm interviewing Mr. Al Ellis for the first time. This interview is taking place at the University of Texas at Arlington Central Library, located in Arlington, Texas. This interview is sponsored by the College of Liberal Arts and is part of the Maverick Veterans Voices Project. So we'll get started. Why did you choose to attend Arlington State College? How did you hear about the school?
It was close to my home in Dallas. At that time, it was primarily a commuter school. I couldn't afford to go out of state or away from Dallas, and the other closest university was SMU, and guess what the rate of tuition there was versus University of Texas at Arlington, or Arlington State College at that time. And I could continue to work too on the weekends and stuff like that.
So you grew up nearby. Did you participate in ROTC in high school?
I was in ROTC in high school, yeah.
Okay. What was your major here at Arlington State College, and did you stick with that major or switch?
Nope, it was history, and I stuck with it the whole way.
Why did you choose history?
At the time, my career plans was to make a career of the Army, and so I just needed to get a degree, and I liked history, so I chose history.
What were your duties while on the Sam Houston Rifle Drill Team, and in particular, your role as a Cadet Corps commander?
Well, the Jodies, or the Sam Houston Rifles, of course, were the nationally famous drill team. When I first got on it, it was just marching. Ultimately, I was a commander, and so basically you're taking the drill team from place to place, city to city, to compete in the competitions. And then my role as a Cadet Corps commander was to be in charge of the entire Cadet Corps and do whatever, quite honestly, the colonels and the majors that were in charge of us told us to do.
And you mentioned Jodies. What does that stand for?
That was Sam Houston Rifles.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the nickname for the Sam Houston Rifles.
Okay. Were there any professors or instructors that significantly influenced you? If so, who were they and why?
I'm sure there were, but I don't remember any names. There was an old history professor named C.D. Richards, and he, I won't say that he influenced me, but he made history interesting. He was just funnier than hell, and he must have been in his 70s at that time, and I think he lasted even a lot longer after I left. But he made all of history interesting and made it really, had a good sense of humor. There was a English teacher, I think her name was Miss Piner, and she was probably just the exact opposite of C.D. Richards. She was one of the meanest persons in the whole wide world, but she was a great teacher, and she made you work hard. And she probably, she had some influence in that if you weren't prepared in her class, you were in trouble, basically.
Did that prepare you for law school?
Probably did a little bit, the discipline. Nobody wanted to be in Miss Piner's English class. And so when we got assigned to Miss Piner's English class, it was like everybody was, woe is me, what's going to happen? I'm going to flunk out or something like that. But once you got in there and you realized that she was just a damn good teacher. And so it really wasn't as hard as everybody said it was.
What was your course load like? Were you part-time?
I was full-time, so I'm presuming that I probably took 15 hours every semester. I finished in 4 years.
So I've read that you worked your way through college.
Correct.
Was it a little difficult to balance your workload with, were you working full or part-time?
I was working part-time and just on the weekends. So what I would do is go home every week and I worked at the Kroger food store, and then come back during the week and go to school. And then of course summer, I didn't go to summer school, so I worked during the summers at various and sundry places.
Did you live in a dormitory on campus?
Yes.
Okay. Was it with the cadets?
Yes.
Okay.
Infamous Davis dorm.
What was that like?
I can't say. I have to take the Fifth Amendment on that one.
Plenty of shenanigans.
Let's just say that Davis Dorm is a very, very strong building. It's still standing today, and it would probably take a nuclear bomb to tear it down because it has seen a lot of activity.
So, in addition to ROTC, what other campus activities did you engage in?
I think I was on the student council. I might have been in another club or two, but I think that's about it, really. I can't think of anything else.
Did you participate in any campus traditions?
Campus traditions. I'm sure I did, but I don't remember what they were. Basically, for us that were members of the Sam Houston Rifles, that was a pretty full-time job for us because we practiced every evening after class for a couple hours. There were no fraternities at the college at that time, but if there's such thing as a fraternity, the Jodys were. And so we all lived over in the Davis dorm together, and of course we did the competitions together and tried to tear the dorm down together unsuccessfully.
So what was a day in the life like then when you would go to school? I mean, what was your schedule like as far as going to class and then doing work with the cadets and things like that?
Excuse me. There was probably about the same as a day in life as a student nowadays. I mean, classes started depending on what you signed up for at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. In between classes, we were at the student center, drinking coffee or chatting, and then if there was classes in the afternoon, we'd do that. Our military stuff all took place usually in the afternoon, and then, as I said, the Jodys we would have practice for a couple hours every afternoon towards the end of the day. So that was kind of your typical day. We ate our meals at the student center. We ate. There was a place called Youngblood's Chicken. I'm sure it's not there anymore, but that was kind of like the hangout for everybody to go eat because the food was cheap and you got a lot of it. And then, to the dorm and studying and stuff like that at night.
So you are a distinguished military graduate. How were you chosen for that honor?
I don't know. No. I'm sure there are qualifications. There were probably grades. And how well you did in the military, in the Corps, and stuff like that. What you wanted to do if you were going to make a career in the Army is become a distinguished military graduate, because then you got what was called a regular Army commission, which is a commission that is the equivalent of those that came out of West Point. So you were not a reserve officer, and not as subject to being rifted out of the Army, so to speak.
So did you go anywhere else for additional military training upon graduating from Arlington State College?
Well, we did the basic. I was stationed immediately to the 82nd Airborne Division in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and so I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, for jump school and basic officer training course. That you have, and then I think that was it for my training. And I was the 82nd at that time was actually in the Dominican Republic, and so when I finished that stuff, I was sent down to the Dominican Republic.
What were your job assignments when you got to the Dominican Republic?
Excuse me. We were there. The 82nd was there as a peacekeeping force. Allegedly, there were. They had just deposed one of the dictators, and so they were about to have elections, and I think LBJ sent them down there just to make sure the elections went okay. I was a second lieutenant. We really didn't do a whole lot. We were just there if needed, and so we'd do practice maneuvers and got to do a lot of jumping out of helicopters, which was a cool thing. So we got a lot of extra jumps that we wouldn't have got otherwise. But basically, just sometimes we were in the city, sometimes we were out at a camp out of the city, and just being there, if they needed us.
What year was that?
1965 and 66.
Okay. And after the Dominican Republic, were you deployed elsewhere?
Came back to the 82nd, Fort Bragg, stayed there until sometime in there I decided I didn't want to be in the Army anymore and was going to change my career. And so when I let the Army know that, then after that I went to Vietnam for my last year in the Army.
If you don't mind me asking, what happened that made you question staying within the Army?
I loved ROTC. and I loved the camaraderie of the guys in ROTC. When I got in the Army, just, honestly, there's a lot of people in the Army that are majors and lieutenant colonels and middle, I call them middle management, and if they were in private life, they couldn't exist because they're just not very competent. And a lot of those people were what we call lifers that stayed in even though they were majors, lieutenant colonels. And I just kind of got discouraged about the people that were telling me what to do.
Yeah, it happens.
Right.
So when were you deployed to Vietnam?
68, 69.
Okay, and what were your assignments there?
I was actually sent to what's called MAC-V, which is Military Assistance Command Vietnam. At that time, it was just before the huge buildup started of American troops there, and we were assigned to Vietnamese Army, Vietnamese political folks that ran the counties and the cities and stuff like that, to provide advice as to, tactics, strategy, fighting the North Vietnamese, the Viet Cong, and also a lot of civic affairs stuff, building schools, getting books in, pencils, those kind of things.
How did y'all do that, like as far as helping with the building and things? Like, where did the materials come from? And
I don't know for sure, but I'm sure that the United States furnished the materials.
okay.
We had, of course, engineering units that could build stuff. I was still an infantry person, and so the main people that initially that I was given advice to was somebody, they call him a Dai Wee. He's a captain, and he was a district commander, and so he had two jobs. One was the military, to take care of the defending his county, is what a district was the equivalent of, and the other was he was a political guy. He was like the mayor of the city, and so you kind of go back and forth between talking about military stuff to talking about how to run your city, how to build a school, how to teach your kids and stuff like that.
So when you went to the Dominican Republic, was that the first time you had ever traveled outside of the U.S.?
Yes.
And so did your time there at all prepare you for Vietnam?
No, didn't have anything.
Completely
Two different
different
things. Yeah. I mean, Dominican Republic was it's an island shared with Haiti. It's a very poor community, not as poor as Haiti. At that time there were not all the resorts and vacation places there are now, and so it was basically like being in a very poor part of Mexico. And again, we weren't doing anything but just we were there if they needed us, kind of thing. Vietnam was an entirely different situation. I mean, the Dominican Republic, the Dominican Republic was considered a short tour, meaning it was an overseas tour in a combat zone, but there was really no combat going on, and so it was. Vietnam, of course, was a combat zone, and there was combat going on. It's an entirely different deal.
And your roles were completely different.
Yes.
Did you see any combat while you were in Vietnam?
Yes and no. I was not with an American outfit, so I was not on the front lines fighting the bad guys, so to speak. But if you're in Vietnam, you're subject to combat, and somebody's either shooting at you, or sometimes you're shooting back, or landmines and that kind of thing, but nowhere near the danger that the regular Army guys and the Marines were having over there.
Do you have any memorable experiences while you were over there?
Memorable experiences: sucking the eyes of the duck head at the Vietnamese family's home because you were the honored guest. That was kind of memorable, which is why I don't eat Vietnamese food anymore, ever, anywhere. I guess I really enjoyed being a advisor to the Dai Wee, the district chief, because it was kind of like you really felt like you were accomplishing something. You were in the community, and it was a small group, and so everybody got to know each other fairly well. There were several of us there, and so that was a neat experience, and you felt kind of like you were really getting something done. The second half of my tour there, by then they had kind of built up the American forces throughout the country, and the generals decided that we're going to send everybody down to south part of South Vietnam, and we're going to wipe out the VC and the NVA in that community, and they just sent us all down there, and that's where, quite honestly, really got turned off by the war, because it was just, I mean, there were 10 people to do the job of one, and it was the most inefficient organization I'd ever seen. I actually started writing my senator to try to tell him that they were making a mistake, but I don't think he listened.
Did other soldiers share your same feelings about that?
I think a lot of them did. You know, I mean, we were there to do a job, and the frustrating part about that section, that half of the tour, was I was in a staff position, and they were just, you know, we were doing a lot of planning and talking and things like that, but you never really got to see anything done. And so you're kind of wondering, you know, what the heck am I doing here? What are we accomplishing, kind of?
So I take it when your feelings or attitude towards being in the military before you went over to Vietnam, I take it they didn't change while you were there, or?
No. I had decided I wanted to get out before I went over there, and because I had that regular Army commission, once you try to resign your commission, then they can keep you for another year if they want to, and because the Vietnam War was going on, that's what they decided to do. So my decision had already been made. You know, I certainly didn't volunteer to go there, but that was my duty and my responsibility, so I went.
Well, it sounds like the Vietnamese did kind of welcome you into their homes while you were there. Was it just one family in particular?
No, it was it was the entire district or the community or stuff like that. The Vietnamese are very sweet and kind people. It was another reason that I realized that the war was really a waste. The people we dealt with could have cared less. You know, they're very family oriented, and so their concern was, do I have my little farm and my rice paddy and my water buffalo, and can I take care of my family? And you know, they really didn't have a whole lot of what I would call strong political feelings one way or the other. They just wanted to be left alone and take care of their family. And so, you know, they were nice. They were easy to get along with. The only I guess fearful thing is you did not know who the enemy was. And so, you know, you could be driving down the road and some little 12-year-old kid is going to throw a hand grenade at you or something like that. But for the most part, they were very kind folks. I like them.
So how did you stay in touch with your family while you were in Vietnam?
Writing letters. I look at the kids, or not kids, but the soldiers nowadays from Afghanistan. They're all on Skype and computers and talking to their family every day or every other day and stuff like that. And of course, that kind of technology just didn't exist at that time. So it was primarily writing letters. I don't think we even had, well, there were no cell phones, and so I don't know that we even had an opportunity. You know, maybe every once in a blue moon we could go somewhere and make a phone call home, but primarily it was letter writing.
Did the war affect your family at all, or you being in Vietnam, did that affect them?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. I was married at the time, but we didn't have any children. My wife was a school teacher. She came back to Dallas and stayed with her family and taught school, and so I don't think there was any kind of an adverse effect.
So did you marry prior?
Yes.
Okay.
I married when I graduated from Arlington.
Okay.
UTA, Arlington State College back then, and so she went with me to Fort Bragg. When I went to the Dominican Republic, she stayed at Fort Bragg. She taught school there, and then when I went to Vietnam, she came back home.
I'm sure being over there was a very stressful situation. Were you able to have an outlet for stress or tension while you were there?
Every military command I know has a bar. So there was plenty of bars. It really wasn't that stressful, I don't think. But you know, we actually had a house trailer that we was planted on the ground there, and we put sandbags all around it as far as protection is concerned. So we lived in that trailer, and basically we cooked meals in there, and I'm sure we played football or whatever outside and that kind of thing. There wasn't any, we didn't have any movies, and we didn't have, if we had TV or radio, I don't remember it. So it was just, did a lot of reading, stuff like that.
How many of you were in the trailer?
I don't know. I'm going to say 5 to 10. Might have been more than one trailer, too. Could have been 2 trailers or 3 together. I don't remember that too well.
You said you read. Where were the books coming from? Were people shipping them or mailing them to you?
Well, I don't know that either, but I'm guessing that they were either being mailed to us, or, the military has a kind of a library,
Yes.
Extensive library that they would bring around books and stuff like that you could either buy or lend out, like from a library. So.
I had no idea they had mobile libraries.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't call it a mobile library. I'd call it one guy with a whole bunch of books, but.
Works.
Right.
Were you awarded any medals or citations?
I received the Bronze Star for Meritorious Service. I received, there's a campaign ribbon that you receive just for being in Vietnam. I think there might have been a good conduct medal or something like that there too. But that's about it. So
other than the bar scene and the playing football, was there any other entertainment, or were you given leave at all? Were you able to travel? We did spend a lot of time with the Vietnamese, and so one of the things that we would do, we would go to different families' homes and eat dinner, and that was kind of like, when we came in, we were the honored guests, and so at that time I knew how to speak some Vietnamese. I don't know anything, I can't remember any of it now, but we could communicate with each other. Everybody got 2 R&Rs while we were there, and so one time I met my wife in Hawaii, and so and each one was a week, and went to Hawaii for a week, and then the second one I did in Hong Kong, and went to Hong Kong and had a bunch of suits made and sent a bunch of brass urns back to everybody in the United States, which I'm sure are worthless now. They may have been worthless then. So.
And then when you get back, you get a letter from the guy that made your suits in Hong Kong for at least 25 years. I don't know how they know where I am, but they track you down and they send you a letter and say, "You need a new suit?"
So there were custom suits?
Yes.
Wow. That
was the deal. Go to Hong Kong, get a custom suit made, and I don't have no idea how much they cost, but they were certainly cheaper than suits in the United States, and so that was one of the things everybody did, was get 4 or 5 of those neat suits made.
Did you enjoy the cuisine there better than in Vietnam?
I don't remember.
When you were in Hawaii, were you able to go to all the islands, or were you all restricted to?
I think we were at the just the main island.
Okay, because I've heard of other people getting leave to Hawaii, and I didn't know if there was a certain area of Hawaii that was for the military.
I don't remember that there was a restriction. We were in a commercial hotel,
Okay.
a resort in the main island, and didn't try to go anywhere else that I can recall.
Do you remember any humorous or unusual events, either in the Dominican Republic or in Vietnam?
I'm sure there were a bunch of them, but I don't remember any of them. I mean, it was, there had to be, life was not really, for people that were in MACV, was not that bad. You were always in a combat zone for sure. At nighttime, people could be shooting at you, and you might be shooting back at somebody. You have no idea who you're shooting at or where they are. But for the most part, it was, other than just, being away from home and, it being hot and all this kind of stuff, it was not a bad deal.
So did you form any close relationships with people there, or do you still keep in touch with some of the soldiers?
I don't. I couldn't probably name, I mean, I can picture their faces, but I couldn't give you the names of the folks that I worked with or who they were or anything like that, and I haven't kept in contact with anybody from the service.
So did your service end when you returned from Vietnam?
Yes.
And when was that?
69.
Okay. And so do you recall the day your service ended? Did you do anything special?
Got the hell out of Dodge. It was April of '69. That's about all I can recall. I know we came back to San Francisco. I know I had to spend the day there turning stuff in and getting all the signing papers and stuff like that, but that's about it. And I was out of there.
What did you do in the days and weeks after you returned?
What did I do after I returned? Well, obviously I had applied to law school at some time, probably while I was there, and I knew that I'd been accepted at SMU. I came back here. I'm sure I worked at the same grocery store that I worked at when I was at Arlington State College, because that manager was the guy that I just worked for the whole time that I worked for Kroger's. Find a place to stay. Find a place at SMU, 2-story house for $90 a month. I know. Just got ready for law school.
Were you going to law school on the GI Bill? Did that help out at all?
It helped a lot. SMU's not very cheap. So I had the GI Bill. My wife at the time was school teaching, and then I was also still working. I got a job at Yellow Freight and worked there sometime during the nighttime hours or on the weekends, and still did some work at Kroger's and stuff like that.
So, how was the transition from military to civilian life?
Easy, no problem for me.
So I've read you were admitted to practice before the U.S. Supreme Court. What was that experience like?
That's a good question, because there's a lot of people that are admitted to practice before the United States Supreme Court that have never appeared before the United States Supreme Court, and I'm one of them. It's not a big deal. What you do is, once you get your law license, then you fill out applications to be admitted to the courts of appeals in the United States Supreme Court, and as long as you're in good standing, then you're admitted to practice there. I have not ever practiced at the United States Supreme Court, but I can if I want to.
So when did you graduate from law school at SMU?
71, December 71.
And you stayed here in the area?
Yeah.
Who did you work for?
Well, I going back to law school because, of course, I felt like I was behind everybody else because I'd spent 4 years in the Army. We finished law school in 2.5 years, graduated early. I was lucky, and I got a job with a firm called Woodruff, Kendall, and Smith, which is a small firm in Dallas that did trial work, which is the same thing I do now. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
So I take it you enjoy it?
I do.
Do you attend any military or Arlington State College reunions?
Very few. And it's not that I have anything against the reunions of any sort, but I'm just not a guy that lives in the past. And so occasionally I'll come out here for the Hall of Honor ceremony and that reunion. But and really the only reason I do that is because a good friend of mine does it all the time, and he's always trying to get me out here, so I do it occasionally.
So how would you say your military experience influenced your career as a lawyer, if it did at all?
I think the military, ROTC and the military had a great influence on my ability as a lawyer because of all the traits that you learn in the military: discipline, working hard, strategic and tactical thinking. I think that's important for a lawyer, especially a trial lawyer. In the military, especially the airborne, we did a lot of physical activity, and there's no doubt that if it wasn't for doing the exercise and stuff like that, and I still do it today, on a pretty regular basis. And if you're going to be a lawyer, you've got to be in shape and still relieve the stress of lawyering by working out. So that part. So I think the tools you learn in the military as a leader are the same tools that kind of help you out a lot through law.
So there have been many changes to the campus since it was Arlington State College. How do you feel when you visit campus as an alumnus and see all of the changes here?
Lost. No, when I drove up and started looking around and got met and we started walking around, I'm looking around and saying, I'm so lost in this place because there's not a building here that I remember. When we had the Hall of Honor thing, which is over at the Student Center, then the Student Center I remember, the building across from it, what's Brazos Hall now, but it used to be Davis Dorm. But just driving in and seeing all the buildings on both sides of Cooper that were never here, it's just, the change is huge. Giant. Really big.
Have you been to College Park District yet?
Nope.
So you were inducted into
But I've been asked that question now. That's the second person that's asked me that. So I guess that's something I'm supposed to go to, isn't it?
Well, I imagine so.
Right.
But
I'm going to have to go now. Two people have asked me if I've been. Right.
Catch a basketball game.
Right.
So you were inducted into the UTA Hall of Honor this year.
Yes.
Can you describe what receiving that honor was like?
Well, I was honored, obviously. And as you look at the list of some of the people that have been in there, I was humbled to be on that same list. I guess I was a little bit surprised because I guess my idea of what the Hall of Honor was, it was to honor people that have been career military folks and like the General Lathams of the world and stayed in for a long time and that kind of thing. It was a neat experience. It certainly was, and it was nice to come back and see some of the old guys from the ROTC days too. So I enjoyed it. I had fun.
So what advice would you give current cadets at UTA?
Get plenty of rest. Do what your mother tells you. I think the advice would be, if the career in the service is what you want to do, go for it. I would never ever give up the fact that I did that, and I'm glad I did. Even though I didn't stay as a career soldier like I thought originally I was going to do, but I feel very strongly about service to our country and to our community, and so it was certainly for me a maturing experience. It was a good experience. I don't have anything bad to say about it. I would say the cadets, I guess if there's one piece of advice that I would give them is that what you experience in ROTC and what you are about to experience when you get into the military on a full-time basis are two entirely different things. And so when you go in with an open mind and don't feel like that you necessarily have to pursue a career that you don't want to pursue if you get in and figure out, hey, this is not what I expected it to be. But that'd be the best advice I could give them.
Is there anything you would like to contribute to the interview? Anything I didn't ask?
Wow, anything you didn't ask? I don't think so.
Okay. Nothing you want to elaborate on, or?
No. I would. Again, I go back to Arlington State College at the time. Was a wonderful place for me to go to because I didn't come from a rich family and my mother couldn't afford to send me to school, and so if I was going to go to school it was going to be on my own dime, and so because it's a state school it was inexpensive, relatively inexpensive, because it was close, and that time mainly a commuter school. It was good access for me to come here, live here, go back and work and things like that. So it was it had the Jodies, which I loved. So it was a perfect deal for me, and it was really, really a good experience as far as I was concerned. And it set me on the road. I think I got a great education here, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. We were rebels then, not mavericks, but.
All right. Well, I want to thank you, Mr. Ellis, for participating in our project. You were very helpful and informative. And it was a pleasure talking with you today, and thank you for your service and contribution to the Maverick Veterans Voices Project.
You're more than welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking me to do it.
Sure.